It's 6 o'clock. I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As required by Section 84-1412, subsection 8 of the Nebraska State Statutes, notice is hereby given that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall inside the door to the City Council chambers. And we have roll call, please.
Miles Banner.
Present.
Keith Kruppett.
Here.
Mark Werner.
Aye.
Cheryl Welch.
Present.
George Klein.
Here. Move to approve the agenda as written. I'll second.
No comments or questions? May we have roll call, please?
Werner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yes.
Kruppett.
Yes, ma'am. Still getting used to that?
Almost said Coates.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
On the consent agenda tonight, just a thank you card and correspondence, minutes for the Planning Commission meeting, monthly treasurer's report and sales tax report, and a quarterly report for the Chadron Area Aquatics and Wellness Center, as well as the fire department membership updates. Any comments on the consent agenda?
No.
Looks like we're on the slope for getting sales taxes.
We're staying pretty consistent. I mean, we had, if you look back, in October and November, they were down just a little bit. December was up a little bit. They offset each other, so basically we're staying
Right on slope.
par, so flat.
And the same thing with the swimming pool.
Correct.
Hooray. May we have roll call, please?
Werner.
Not
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yes.
Kruppett.
Yes, ma'am.
First tonight in our official business, I'd like to introduce a brand new city employee. Chief, you want to introduce our new employee?
Mayor, Council, good evening. Tim Lordino, Police Chief. I'd like to introduce Shannon Langford. It took us a little time to get her over here, but we got her here in front of you, and so she's been with us, I think, since August.
Yep.
And she's a dispatcher. She's out on her own. She's doing a really good job for us, and she comes from Sheridan County.
Thank you. I love it.
Go ahead.
which part of Sheridan County? From
Hay Springs.
Hay Springs?
Uh-huh.
Got a short drive.
Okay. And I stay here when I need to, like tonight. So, yeah, love the job. Love working in the city of Chadron. So, appreciate the opportunity.
We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
I'd like to introduce resolution number 2019-07 and move for its adoption.
And I will second.
This resolution goes in tandem with some legislation that was passed in 2016. Do we have the list? Do we have all the documentation?
It's in your packet behind tab C.
Okay. I just read the memo and didn't actually pull this up, so.
And Brandon is with us this evening if you have any questions or if you'd like for him to provide an explanation.
Mayor, this is a tax credit for the folks that...
Yes, this is as part of we're doing our part of things to make sure that these guys can get their tax credit. Brandon, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, that's pretty much about it. Pat was gone tonight, so I helped fill in. Him and I work together as far as keeping track of all the records. The members have to be a voted on member. There's certain meetings and drills and trainings that they have to do and positions, and they can acquire these points throughout the year. So once you get the number of points, then you can get the tax incentive.
That's just a 250 straight credit, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep.
And how many of our volunteers qualified?
I didn't have, there's a list right
There's
here.
27 on your
27?
list.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Good return on our investment, I think.
Excellent, yes. I'm glad to have all of our members. And while you're here, just a personal thanks to you and the whole department for all the work you do.
Yep, glad to do it. So, thank you.
All right. And we have a roll call, please, on resolution 2019-07.
Werner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yes.
Kruppett.
Yes, ma'am.
Next up tonight, I'd like to invite Deb Cottier forward for her monthly report. Deb, how's it going?
Good evening. It's going well. Thanks. Wanted to say thanks to those of you who were able to join us on Friday. We had our annual meeting. I think next year we're going to maybe look at shifting that date just a day or two or a week maybe. We seem to have more and more of our traditional folks that attend that be tied up with a wrestling match that goes on at that particular weekend. So we did have, I think, a few cancellations because of the weather as well. So we can't talk about that, but thanks to those of you who were able to attend. We appreciate you coming. Besides my written report, I did, in fact, send our annual report that I hope you all have a copy of, particularly those that weren't able to join us Friday. That really is the best summation of our activities for the year. It not only lists who the board members are, but it also lists all of the business members in our community that are a member of the corporation. And they, of course, help with the funding base of that as well. One of the priorities that our board discussed and are focusing on for the coming year is to increase that list of dues-paying members other than the municipalities. We did, as I pre-reported in your handwritten report, elect Jason Carnahan to the board. He was the only person on the ballot, so I felt fairly safe in telling you he was going to be elected. Jason joins us. He has been a member of our loan review committee for a number of years, so it'll be a great addition. We try, it's sort of an unofficial policy, we try to keep a banker on that board, partly because of their the importance of them bringing to us potential businesses, but also so that we have representation from the financial community and it doesn't stay with one bank for a long period of time. So we sort of rotate that in and out. So we've not had anyone from Security First, so at least in the 10 years I've been there. So I'm glad that Jason agreed to come on the board. He'll be a real asset. And then besides Carrie Bailey and Steve Barron's moving up, we also moved up Corey Sorensen. He's now the treasurer, and elected Ty Hulls as our treasurer. So we have a full slate of officers. Someone new on the board said farewell to Philip Jensen. He is now officially the past president. He will still be invited to attend meetings, but no longer votes. And then we also recognized Bryce Landon for what he and I eventually figured out is about 22 years. He served on the board of directors for NNDC, which is more than you'd expect anyone to do. And so we're really going to miss his historical knowledge as well as the connection. We are now going to have a younger member of the utility business in TJ Rutledge will sit on the board. Our bylaws say that we need to have someone representing the utility industry. So that will be TJ. We will continue, I was just going to mention, for those of you that might ever want to attend, we do continue to have the board meetings once a month. They're the third Friday of the month, 7 a.m., now at our office at 337 Main Street. So if you're ever interested in attending, we'd love to have you. Unless there's some major reasons, like somebody's going to be out of town or I don't think we're going to have a quorum, but we almost always are able to do those on that third Friday. The next piece of work, immediately for me anyway, is the Department of Economic Development has indicated that they want a more substantial report on our CDBG revolving loan fund. These are the dollars that we have to account for a little bit differently and a little more critically than our other two grant programs, because the Department of HUD anyway, Housing and Urban Development, I knew it wasn't health, they actually require that we make every effort possible to impact low to moderate income citizens. And so the documentation on that is sort of time consuming. And so I'll be doing that on our three most recent CDBG loans. Thankfully, he didn't ask me to do all of them, so I'll focus on the 3 that they've asked us to do and get that report back to him. That is something, of course, that officially goes through Dawes County, because it was the Dawes County Commissioners who received the grant to begin with. So we contract with them, and I'll work with them. Vic Rivera is the chair this year, and so it's a little more difficult to connect with him to get things signed. But we'll work that out. That's not a big deal. So we'll have those submitted in time for the requested time period. And then the final thing I would mention is next Monday we're going to, I mean myself and hopefully a couple of board members and maybe our attorney, we're going to meet with the gentleman who is interested in looking at housing. So he did call, and when I thought he was going to be here today, but as it turned out, he'd made arrangements to come next Monday, which is even better, because I don't know that I'd have found bankers and attorneys today on a holiday. So anyway, his name is John Kramer, and he will be here on Monday. And I'll be setting up an appointment, at least with a couple of folks, and maybe just do some drive-by touring in the community, that sort of thing. And I will let you know where he stands and what his impression is. And other than that, unless you have questions, that's all I have this evening.
When's Ronza opening?
Oh, I don't know. Soon.
In the future.
February 6th. I was in there today.
Awesome.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Well, I love the idea you're working on a couple other food-related inquiries. I think one thing that would be absolutely fabulous is adding more restaurants such as the Far West. I think there's a hunger for some different types of food.
I certainly agree with you. The challenge that we have come up with is the cost for setup. Whether they are starting brand new or if they're just expanding from a business that they already have, they may have the knowledge and even the reputation, but unless we have a spot for them that they can move into easily, it's pretty pricey.
Right.
So that's been a challenge. But yes, everything revolves around available places that not only have what they need in terms of a restaurant, but have the parking that's needed to make a restaurant successful, access, those kinds of things. And so we continue to look at a couple of different options. And the other thing is a couple of folks have talked to me about specific franchises. And I would just say to you that the franchise world has just gone berserk in terms of what it costs to secure one of those franchises. And now perhaps, maybe Runza or Domino's or some other really more fast food type restaurants, maybe those are a little more affordable. But if you're looking at something for a sit-down chain restaurant, you better have $1 million. And that's because you have to buy their equipment, you have to set it up like they want it. In some cases, you have to build it, plus the franchise and the monthly fees and everything's added on and added on. It's just crazy. It has probably doubled in the 10 years that I've been looking at franchise fees. So, but we keep looking at it, especially if someone's interested in inquiring about what it would take to purchase one. More than happy to help put them in touch with the right people.
Anybody with $1 million can just call you,
Just
right?
call me.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Deb.
Introducing resolution number 2019-08 and move for its adoption.
I'll second.
This is a final plat or preliminary plat we took care of earlier in the year. Well, actually, was it last year? I don't remember. Anyhow, this is the plat of several lots to the south of Greenwood Cemetery. Greg, any comments?
No other
Any
than
changes?
the planning commission and the meetings have given their approval for, or their recommendation for approval for the replat of this property.
Any comments or questions from the council?
No.
All right. May we have roll call on Resolution 2019-08?
Wyndham.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Shannon.
Yes.
Ruppert.
Yes, ma'am.
I was at that. So good.
All right. Introducing resolution number 2019-09 and move for its adoption.
I'll second.
These are guidelines on a streamlined approval process for common special designated liquor licenses. Discussed this at our previous meeting and requested staff come back with a set of guidelines for such a streamlined approval process. So, I understand we've made a couple of changes since last time. And just,
So we didn't make any changes to the Exhibit A. We discussed quite a bit as to how to address some of the comments in regards to designee in terms of agent and what that would look like. And I think the consensus on that was as well, there's concern as to how far that level goes. I think that would be more of an internal administrative policy item that we would look at having in place during the approval of this process, and doesn't necessarily fit or go into this overall kind of general approval document that we would be looking at in terms of the outline here, and that's more of kind of the administrative process. In addition to that, we also discussed how do we inform council then of those SDLs that were administratively approved, and keeping folks aware of whether it was an approval, denial, those recommendations. And internally, we discussed that what we would do is provide in the consent agenda a monthly update as to the approval, denial, who approved it, and the overall total numbers of those SDLs that were approved each month. And that would become part of that internal document that we would use in conjunction with this resolution for the approval of the SDLs administratively.
I'm uncomfortable with the designees, not how we're gonna, having the staff figure that out administratively. Matter of fact, I was thinking that maybe crossing out or their designated or their respective designees. Just think back when before Greg, when Donna was acting everything. At what point do we just suck it back up into the council? I mean, is it anyway? To me, I'd just like to see it be those three positions, and if there's an acting, there's an acting. But if they're on the road, we can call in. Anyway, if we're already we're moving it from the council, and now we're moving it down the chain of command to an undesignated possibility. Anyway, I'm uncomfortable with that.
So you're saying in this section here, just scratch that?
Yeah.
So would you be more comfortable if each of the individuals stated who their designee might be?
I think it'd be more a level.
More what?
A level.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we've got, what, 2 department heads?
See,
And, how far down do you go? So we are backing off the council's thing, and now we're talking about moving, and not just down to the next level, but, possibly 2 or 3 levels, and not actually knowing how that process would work. So anyway, I would like, if we're going to move it to the staff, to keep it at the highest levels of the staff, my personal opinion.
and that would be,
Just
that sentence would then just be, committee consisting of the city manager, the police chief, and the city clerk be designated as the agent.
Yes.
And if something happened, it would simply come to the council. Is that
Yes.
what I'm hearing you say?
Or if it's, a short-term thing, there's no reason, if I understood what lawyer said last time, they could phone in for a quick meeting.
Sure.
Or an email,
Yeah.
paper trail, yeah.
It's not like we're not going to know who the folks are.
Right. And if there's an emergency or a health situation, that would just put it back here.
Right.
Okay? So for clarity, you'd like to go that way.
That's what I'm suggesting on that.
Okay? I'm very comfortable with that, personally.
And not to say that after a year or 6 months of it working perfectly, that we couldn't revisit it. But I'd personally like to keep the reins a little tighter while we work out the kinks.
Sure.
I have a question regarding Exhibit A when we're ready to discuss that.
Please, go ahead.
Greg, I was wondering, under application time number 1, it seems to me very clear. And then number 3, I just wonder if that's needed to be added, or is that simply for clarification because of the NLCC and what their time requirement is? Because certainly when we are saying what our time, it's no less than 15 business days, and the other is a minimum of 10 working days. So it seems to me we're already covering that. Why did you decide to include that?
And we're including that as clarification as to what the Liquor Control Commission requirements are. It doesn't necessarily need to be specifically in here, but we decided that it was good to provide both what our time frame is as well as Liquor Control Commission. That way they understand that while we may approve this within that 15-day window, if they wait till after that 15-day window and then they, go 9 days before their event and they don't make it in that 10 days at the Liquor Control Commission, because we don't submit these, the applicant has to submit these, so if they don't submit it within the 10 working days that the Liquor Control Commission requires, we don't want to be held responsible for them not getting it in on their time frame, so that's why we included it in here.
I see.
So
Okay.
it is more of a clarification that while we may administratively approve this with enough time to have the Liquor Control Commission give their approval, if they don't then turn around and do their responsibilities within that same time frame, since it is a truncated window,
Okay.
that we just don't want to be held liable for them not doing the second part of it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Miles, I think if we're going to change this, don't we have to do it by a motion?
Yeah, I was actually just about to say if there was,
So I'd like to make a motion to strike or their respective designees.
I will second that motion.
Okay, let me see.
Any further
Where's that?
discussion of matter of designees? If there is not, then we have roll call on the amendment.
Werner?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
I think there's a typo. Do you want to know about that?
Sure.
It's on number 4 under the review process, the bottom full line. I think it's supposed to say Control Commission in the same manner as if approval instead of denial, or denial. Should that be or? Just
On the
asking.
guidelines?
Yes. Thank you for catching that.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So we're just voting on the amendment.
Okay. Oh, okay. Aye, yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Bannon?
Yes.
Crowfoot?
Yes, yes.
And so for those in attendance and those watching, there is no specific requirement that a city council be the only body that approves special designated licenses. And due to the timing of city council and setting the agenda, it can be cumbersome for liquor license holders to get events scheduled, get the special designated license approved in a reasonable amount of time, especially if something comes up late. So this becomes a process where the city manager, the city clerk, and chief of police can approve it administratively, they can issue that local approval for the special designated license and get that straight off back to the liquor license holder to submit to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission. Chief?
I'm ready for the next one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You still need to vote on this.
Still need to vote on that.
Yeah, I'm aware, I thought he was going to speak to this
there,
resolution.
I was bringing up the one comment we got last week, or 2 weeks ago from Mimi, on eligible, on applicant must have fewer than 3 violations in the previous year. And same manager said he kind of made a suggestion. Does anybody believe that we should go change that number, or are we comfortable with 3?
I'm comfortable with 3. I think that
Was the only comment we got.
yeah. I understand the concern, but again, as Chief said, I'm personally speaking, very comfortable with the number being 3 and the judgment resting with that committee. And again, if there's any issue where they see fit to deny, it still comes to the council. I think that's a very smooth process.
Personally, I think 3 is pretty generous, and I don't think there's any problem with making that smaller. I'm not going to argue that point, but I know last time when we had our meeting, Chief Lordino did explain the different types of violations and what they entailed, and I just thought it was interesting, and I certainly put great value in your opinion, but I think Mimi's point was a good one. And so I'd be very comfortable changing that to 2, but this is my opinion.
Any further discussion? Anybody wishing to speak from the chamber? And we have a roll call on Resolution 2019-09.
Werner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yes.
Crowfoot.
Yes, ma'am.
Want to do these together or split them up?
Are they for the same people?
No, they're for separate groups. It's up to you.
Do you guys have a problem grouping these?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a problem grouping these next 2?
No, I don't.
I'd like to introduce resolutions number 2019-10 and 2019-11 and move for their adoption.
I'll second that motion.
Chief?
Good evening again. I would recommend approval for both of these SDLs. One is for the FA dinner, and the other one I think is for the hospital's appreciation dinner, I think. I don't know if we've done the hospital appreciation dinner before. Have we done, did we do it last year? Okay, I know that we've done that.
I don't know if that was last year, but it
Yeah.
has been improved in the past.
Okay, yeah, so I would approve both of them. I recommend approval, sorry.
Any comments, questions? May we have roll call, please, on these 2 resolutions?
Werner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yes.
Crowfoot.
Yes, ma'am.
Moving to I in our agenda tonight, the discussion item regarding a proposed ice skating rink. I have a memo from the city manager talking about some investigation that was already done, and then we have some questions and requests from the council as well. But Greg, if you want to start us off and give us a quick overview of the situation.
So in the 17-18 fiscal year budget, it was included in there out of the Alliance Community Energy, which is the ACE, and funding to construct a ice skating rink. And within that fiscal year, that was not completed. And it was asked to take a look at what the feasibility of constructing an ice skating rink would be within the city here for use. So during the discussion, we had several meetings internally to discuss what opportunities there would be with drainage ditches, Briggs Pond, and the city dams. And in addition, we discussed what opportunities there would be to build a custom rink somewhere else in town that isn't necessarily one of these locations. And we provided a summary of each location in which drainage ditches, since they are the primary purpose, is to facilitate the movement of water, we didn't feel that it was appropriate to create blockage within these locations, which could create flooding issues upstream. Even though your winter months are typically your low flow season, you'd still have the potential to obstruct those flowing areas, which doesn't necessarily lend to, creating a feasible location for an ice skating rink. And then we looked at Briggs Pond and the city dams, and these two are what I consider open bodies of water, in which Briggs Pond has typically a depth of greater than 8 feet, and the city dams has depths up to 35 plus feet in certain locations. So we looked at what the feasibility of this is in terms of a liability and a staff timing issue from the city. And we looked at whether the recommendation would be for the city to take on the liability to check the thickness of ice at each one of these locations each day to promote safe ice skating at Briggs Pond and the city dams, and was our recommendation that these would not be promoted as ice skating rink locations. While the public does utilize these as ice skating rink areas now, we didn't feel that it would be appropriate to actively promote these due to a liability issue for us to actively go out there and check thicknesses of ice and confirm that is going to be adequate to hold people out there in ice skating and those types of activities. So that's why we decided that Briggs Pond and the city dams wouldn't be a feasible location for us to actively promote these. So then we started looking at what the custom rink options would be, and we were looking at what the feasibility in terms of if we look down on the budget items, a bentonite type of berm location, or what they call an easy rink location, which is essentially a fiberglass type of outer perimeter with a poly liner on the inside to hold the water. What we're looking at is what the opportunity to maintain the ice, and when we look at what the climate data shows, it shows that the average winter month temperatures is typically greater than 32 degrees, which does not lend to producing ice nor maintaining that ice within those locations here in Chadron. So we were then looking at, what the chiller options would be and what the other options. I know Scotts Bluff, which is not located in this memo, did a synthetic ice, which they received a grant from Black Hills Energy to have that constructed, which was over $25,000 to have a synthetic material placed down that they can utilize almost on a year-round basis, but primarily during the winter months. And then also we did a little bit of research in terms of what those chiller type of systems could run, and they can run anywhere from a rental of $150,000 on up in terms of the size and the locations. So we looked at what the feasibility then of what Rapid City is also doing, and when you look at their website, they also have issues about maintaining the quality of ice there when the temperatures get above, I believe, 45 degrees, that they usually have issues trying to maintain a surface that is usable for ice skating, even with the chillers located in there. So what we're looking at then is, if it was feasible, what is our staff time allocations? And that's a huge concern that we have in terms of the available staff time in order to meet what the expectations might be in terms of quality of ice, keeping ice out there, keeping water, the availability of water, and how do we overall get this to a level that can be usable. So what our recommendation was is that at this time it wasn't really a option to move forward in terms of the construction of a rink, but if council wishes to move forward with the expectations of the rink and level of service requested, we could take another look at this. But right now it's the staff's recommendation that while this is a quality of life type of issue and providing outdoor recreation activities, we just don't feel that it is something that can be maintained adequately with the available staff time that we have now. And due to the changes in climate, we just don't feel that it is adequate to be able to maintain an ice. We looked at just this last week in terms of the temperature that we've had, and it wouldn't be something that would have been sustainable in terms of ice skating rinks. We've had 45, 50 plus temperature, and we would have essentially had a pond out there that we would then be waiting weeks to try and get ice to be maintained again. And I know staff has attempted to construct some of these rinks in the past with little success in terms of being able to actually produce a surface that was actually skatable on, so.
Greg, what was the surface? What do you mean not skatable?
So.
You fill it with ice.
It just never maintained any ice. We just never had an opportunity to actually produce ice. And I know Scott has had multiple experiences trying to construct these, and he can give you a little bit more of a background as to the locations, what staff has attempted to do in the past, and what the outcomes of those locations have been.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, we've done it 3 different times now. We've tried it in Memorial Park in the old tennis courts. We couldn't. The surface wasn't completely level. What would happen is we'd get melt off. Some side would be concrete, some would be 2 inches of ice. You know, it wasn't perfectly level in there to do that with. We've tried it in up by the ball fields where we had a nice wide open area. Direct sunlight's miserable for it.
So what did you say? I'm sorry.
Direct sunlight.
Oh, direct sunlight, yes.
So we tried it in Wilson Park. We put it into the draw, which is surrounded by trees. Well, good and bad things. I mean, you're talking about doing this in the wintertime, and all our facilities are winterized. We have 0 water anywhere. That's the first step if this would have to do. So that's going to have to be installed somewhere, wherever you decide to do it. And then putting something up and down. Greg was talking about the one in Scotts Bluff. I visited with their park superintendent for a couple hours this week, and we talked about their facility they have. They actually set that up in November and tear it down in April. It's a synthetic surface. It had to go. That came with they got a deal on it, and I think it was $21,000 is what the Black Hills Energy paid for that rink. And then they bought a shed and skates, and have this all sitting downtown in their plaza area. And they do not, the city of Scottsbluff does not run it. They have organizations come in because they have to have their own insurance on it, and they don't have the staff. And this is a Parks Department that's triple mine with a $1.7 million budget, and they can't afford to do it. It's one of those things where, like I said, it's not something we haven't tried. We actually tried to get a fire truck and build ice with a fire truck spraying water. We had a city manager that was from Wisconsin, and that's how they did some of them. We had a problem with the truck starting to freeze up while we were trying to spray water. I mean, we just had a fire the other night out north of town where we broke a valve on the back of one of the tankers when it froze up coming back into town when it was like cold out. So that one, fire chief's not really excited about. Those are just some of the things we've had in the past, but you know, we talked. We had, like Greg said, we had this in the superintendent's meeting. We've talked to everything. You know, we tried to figure out some place to put it, some way to do it. I'm kind of concerned with the fact that we're going down this avenue after we had all these cuts in our budgets the way it is anyway. You know, we took a 12% cut. I've got a bill right now for a light at our tennis court that I can't fix. We don't have lights on our tennis court right now when that came down in the storm. I mean, it's $4,000 to fix one light pole. I have great, and I'm going to wait till the end of the budget cycle. Hopefully we can save enough money to get that done. But if we have anything else that we have to fix, we won't be able to do that. So taking on another project like this is pretty, and we are a staff member down in our Parks Department right now anyway. We've been without, there's only basically 2 of us in town because 2 people are constantly rotating out to the airport. One person out there does not get the job done. It's just too much. So staffing is going to be a big concern. I mean, and Greg is not being unrealistic about that. There's not a lot of opportunity during the day to get stuff like that done. So I'd be happy to answer any of the questions, but that's the stuff that we've done and tried so far.
I agree with you. I think it'd be a nice thing to do, I suppose, but it would be very expensive, time consuming, and for ice skaters, I think they're just going to have to wait for a cold winter and go out to the city dam.
Yes, I personally, I think we need to look at the assumptions. I'm talking, in my mind, and I don't know about the other parents out there, I want a glorified pond. You know, I had a great time skating on ponds when I was a kid. We scooped the ice ourselves. We had no skating skills. We tried to improve our football skills. So exactly what would be the expectations of the public and what of the city staff, and would all the funding have to come from the city? I mean, we raised almost $500,000 for the pool just locally. We had all sorts of grants from other people. The college teamed up with us, and if we're looking at this in a permanent spot at the high end with labor, we're talking $5,800. Because in my mind, one of my assumptions, Greg, is that the hole stays there, and you wouldn't be tearing it down every year.
And that's something where, Mark, I mean, quite honestly, we don't have a piece of property we put a hole in and leave there.
Yeah, you do.
Where?
Right next to the shelter at the community gardens.
And when we look at, and I know Scott has brought up, one of the logistical issues that we would have to look at is how do we get water to these locations? So, we're looking at, if we were to do this on a permanent basis, we would have to look at installing a portion of a new service line dedicated to specifically filling these locations, because when we look at the community garden location, we rentarize those locations in terms of, not having the water being able to run all year out there. So we had to do something that was frost-free and dedicated for the entire...
Those are some of the assumptions, and that's why the importance of this meeting. I did a field trip today to the city ponds. Ice was about 10 inches, and as everybody's pointed out, it's one of the warmest winters we've had. So 10 inches, mid-January. How long will we actually be skating? It's kind of a December to maybe on the outside March. As we do with we've got great volunteers on our recreation side. City staff doesn't chalk the fields. It's the parents. Parents put the bases in. Sometimes they mow. I mean, we've got great citizens here that are willing to pitch in, and I think we should investigate some of these other opportunities. The bent nights, $2,800. Well, if we'd have bought $2,000 worth of bent night last year, we'd be labor and $800 from a skating rink. Would the college...
What's that, Mark, what would that be in the summertime then, if you're going to leave that there?
A hole.
Full of water?
No, you'd put a valve on the low end side and run it right down to the ditch right next to it. You just put a aluminum or PVC pipe in a valve, and you could drain it right down to the thing. And that's an option. I'm not saying I've got all the answers. I'm just saying it's too expensive. Well, over the course of a couple of years, we can buy this down, or we can have people are willing to spend on their kids. Man, some of us parents should probably spend a little time on the ice ourselves. The college, my God, what are they going to? What opportunities for outside stuff do they have? I mean, have we talked to the college? I mean, they've got so many clubs and stuff, and they've got they gave us $25,000 for the swimming pool, the Student Affairs Senate, the Coffee Foundation. What about the county and their building fund? I know at least one of the supervisors that would say maybe the county would put in on this, but to say nix-nay without getting a feeling with the SARE assumptions, getting some input from the public. Is there more than just a few of us that think skating's great? I mean, and how do you grow that skating public? What's that?
I guess, from my standpoint, I would much rather see.
Deb, could you,
Deb Cottier, NNDC. I fully understand about citizens' desires, and I also understand about quality of life and why that's important to have in your community. I think if it comes down to a point where we need to prioritize, we have to be very careful about that, because every time we decide to do something, there is a very long-term, on the backside of it, maintenance and those kinds of things. If in fact, I guess my question mark is if there's 10 inches of ice at the city dams, is it skatable? Is that really the most reasonable, quickest, most cost-effective option for people? Or are you saying we need to figure out if the public would even go that far? Would they rather skate here in town?
I've been out there when there's been hockey games going on.
Yeah.
But if you're 10 years old,
yeah,
you can't go out there. And if you don't start at 6, 7 years old, you never get very good, and it's not something that becomes a lifetime thing. So,
But
a
I
kid
guess
on a bicycle is not going to go out to the city ponds, and in the wintertime, what outside activities do we have in town?
well, and that becomes the question in my mind as someone who pays taxes for a lot of stuff that kids use that I don't have children. I'm happy to do that. I understand about quality of life, but let's take a hard look at, can we be all things to every single thing somebody wants done in our community? And if there's a way to effectively ask the public, I think we should do that. Because if there are 10 people in Chadron that want it done, then I have a real hard time with us spending money to, but, if there's 200, I don't know what the magic number is, but I guess I don't see that. Maybe it's because, I grew up in a place where we ice skated my whole grade school years. I moved out here and it was like, well, you live here. That'd be like expecting one in Phoenix. I just don't see that there's a true expectation that outdoor facility be made available to every kid in Chadron at this point. So that's just my personal opinion.
When I was looking at this, thank you, Deb. When I was looking at this, I was really struck by the easy rink design. I thought it looked great. My father used to put something like this around our garden, and we had a little rink. When we moved here, we had the roller rink, which is gone. I think your question of what do we have for kids, and we don't need a great investment. There were young people at the high school who were very interested in a skateboard park. And there are things that we could provide for our young people to do that doesn't cost, there could be an investment of time, energy from different citizen groups, as well as the council being involved. But one problem I have with this, and I don't think we need to build an enclosure. My interest is piqued with your idea of having it out near the gardens. I am concerned about the changing climate. That is a reality that we are facing. Now, that being said, we're looking at certain times, December through March. We're not talking about a depth that we have to worry about. Is it 10 or 15 inches deep? Certainly, the ice has to be a certain depth. I don't know what that might be. However, my interest is piqued, Mark. So I'm curious to this, and I certainly don't want to see something that causes you and your employees a lot of extra work, because that you already have a plate full. So how can we balance that? How can we find out if there's interest, and how can we move forward with that? That's my question.
Keith, got any ideas? I'm looking at my.
Well, I'm
notes
just
here.
wondering if we can form some sort of subcommittee or even an informal committee to develop some sort of outreach. I think that
Kind of
they're
like Doc did with the pool.
yes. So I think there's probably more demand. It's also one of those things that I think people around here don't realize that there even could be an option. So who even talks about it or worries about it? It's one of the big disappointments I had as being just even an inline skater moving to Chadron. There's no place to skate. There's not a lot of great sidewalks. There's not a great paths, nothing. So ice skating is something that as a family you would never guess, but everyone in my family down to a 7-year-old has their own pair of skates. So we drive to Rapid several times a year and have skated. So it'd be great to move forward. Now, I understand the concerns with climate, but if you have enough water to be deep enough to freeze, then even though it'll thaw on the top, the core will stay cold and it'll refreeze at night for the most part. So yeah, it is a finite window, but I think that having the supply will actually help create the demand, and investigating that interest further.
I think
is
being
where
clear
I
on-
would say the next step.
And I don't,
The expectations of service you're saying is just, if you can skate, you can skate, and if you can't, you can't. There's no, as far as
No
parents-
calling up
If it's
Scott in the middle of the
bumpy, it's
night
bumpy.
saying, I've got a beer and a desire to go skating, come help me out. No, I mean, and I don't think it needs to be lighted. This is, so this committee that Keith's talking about, could be a way to come up with a common set of assumptions and look at the art of the possibility, art of the possible.
in what we talk about this, I think it's very, very important where the city is financially at this point to bring up the fact that, we have cut all of the staff's budget by 12% across the board in terms of every department's budget. We have cut all capital out of all of the departments. We have essentially cut everything we possibly can to get to a point where we are fiscally stable right now. And I don't think I can be sitting up here and tell you, yes, let's form this subcommittee, let's go after this, knowing that we're not increasing staff's wages, we're not meeting our comparability requirements. We have FOP contract and union contract negotiations that are actively going on. We have all of these other obligations that are going on out there, and yet we're talking about a quality of life issue that, how are we going to afford this moving forward, and we're not affording the essential services that we should be providing right now. And to me, it's more critical that we look at where we are financially versus what the quality of life aspects that we are looking at. So, it's important that, we have quality of life aspects. I'm not, discounting that at all, but I think it's imperative of me as a city manager to remind council as the policy-making body that we are in a financial situation that we are not going to climb ourselves out of by being able to do ice skating rinks and quality of life, things that we're going to be putting more burden on staff and more burden on staff with less resources. So to me, I think we need to all take a step back and look at the financial impacts. Even if we were to look at LB 840 grant dollars, right now the LB 840 dollars are completely spoken for, and we're waiting for the money to come back from, so we wouldn't even be able to allocate LB 840 dollars until the end of this coming fiscal year and the next fiscal year when those dollars recuperate from the sales tax. So, organizations may have an opportunity to, go after those dollars, but I think it's imperative that, we really take a hard look at what the priorities are in terms of what our fiscal resources are for spending, because we talk about these and, again, it's one of those, I'm not discounting those types of items, but I just want to remind council that we are in a fiscal situation that we're not going to climb ourselves out of very quickly.
Right. All I'm saying is if we're already most way through January, so obviously nothing's happening this year anyway. But if we started now or very soonish to see if there's interest, generate to see if there is like a 401(c) that wanted to help raise money or gain money, like if we started now, we could start building these foundations, and maybe in a year or 2 years, we can have basically the momentum to move forward, and it won't be as impactful, if impactful at all, in the city. And it'll be far enough down the road that we can also plan for it, for any impact that could be done for city resources.
I guess at this point, we should probably see if there's some folks out that might want to address this, if anybody wants to talk about it, or...
Is anybody present who wishes to speak? You are invited forward.
Public opinion weighs a lot on things like this.
I don't know that I have anything to add to what's been discussed, but just that...
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Julie Johndridge, a citizen here in Chadron, and I heard the word ice skating rink and I got excited, so that's why I'm here tonight. I grew up slinging skates over my shoulder and going out to the pond, going to the rink. Lived in a bigger community, of course. We had a bigger indoor rink. But you know, in moving to this area of the country, when I first came here 15, 20 years ago in South Dakota, Nebraska, I was very surprised that ice skating is not a thing here at all. So, you know, I see that. But, you know, it's not just something to do, it's also, you know, it promotes fitness, and I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I understand everything that's been set up here. But it just intrigued me. Just saying ice skating intrigued me, so I'm somebody like that out there in the community, and there could be more of us.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the matter?
Janet Johnson, citizen.
You're off the clock.
I grew up ice skating, junior high, high school years. Okay, that was 35 years ago. Climate change, things have changed. I grew up ice skating in Rushville, 30 miles to the east. I don't think that you can sustain the ice. We were out in the middle of, well, actually we were right east of the indoor swimming pool, and they burned up the dirt. Fire department would come over and flood it a couple times a week. We'd have bonfires on the ice. Got cold enough at night. It was cold enough during the day to sustain that ice. I don't think that you can do that in today's world in western Nebraska.
You know what? That'd be a pretty easy experiment to do, Greg.
We've done it.
No, not yet. Not in these two methods. I mean, obviously, there's 10 inches of ice out in the city dams. So what's putting it on concrete? You know, all the thermal mass works the wrong direction. If we got thermal mass on the banks and a little bit of shade, you know.
I agree. I would agree with that. That's why the skating rink on top of the old tennis court did not work, because you cannot have that concrete down there absorbing the heat and then trying to keep the ice cold. Your idea of trying to put bentonite down and leaving bentonite there in the time when you're not using it, what's going to happen to that hole with bentonite in it?
It's going to crack up.
Yeah, but you can't let that, you can't drain that bentonite pond and let it go downstream. You'd have to let it just dissipate down. Because who's going to want that bentonite downstream? Nobody. So either you remove it or you leave it in place. You don't drain it off. I've thought about this. I've skated, like I said, most of my life. Roller skated, inline skated, ice skated.
I hadn't thought about the runoff.
Can't tell that now, but I did it for a long time. I just don't think you can sustain the ice.
I will tell you that I go up to the Air Force Base and I see ice all 18 inches deep on a 55-degree day and in February. So I mean, can't say the Air Force is smarter than us. Just the Navy guy's never going to admit that. So
what are you proposing?
I'm with Keith. Let's let's study it, and let's don't put the financial, I mean, we're can-do people. It doesn't have to come all from the city budget. We've got partners out there, and, you know, if we make a $5,000 mistake, well, I'd rather make it for our kids than anybody else.
Especially if it's a $5,000 mistake that comes from
Somebody else.
citizen money, donated money.
Or, you know, I'm willing to pony up my fair share, believe me. I put my money into the swimming pool, and, you know, I make that drive, or my family makes that drive many times in the winter up to Rapid City. I don't want to skate out there in public. I want to skate here in town and have my friends laugh at me, not people I don't know.
Some people, that equation is the other way around. Any further discussion from the council? Anybody else who wishes to speak? So it sounds as though this is a matter that is in the hands of the community.
I thought there was at least two of us that thought we should be forming some sort of a committee.
I agree. I think that's a good idea. Does it need to be an official committee? Does it need to be officially appointed by the council, or can it work informally? Just to establish interest and come back to it.
Rather than us do anything,
we really can't.
I think we should have some outside influence.
We got a young man here.
Got some outside influence coming right here.
Dylan Waldron, student at Chadron High School. On the ice skating rink, personally, there are 3 other classmates here. I mean, we're all for giving it a shot. I know I'd donate. Activities for youth in Chadron aren't in abundance. It'd be something new, fun. I'm with Mr. Crowfoot and Mr. Werner. I'd be willing to go for it.
Thanks for having the guts to get up there.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing. I think that's really important to have an idea of what the youth are thinking. And I have 2 daughters, and I think there's not any harm in talking some more about this and finding out how we might be able to make it happen without a great expenditure of funds. And if we're going to invest in something families and young people can enjoy. For me, I appreciate you coming up and speaking, and I think it's a great idea to pursue, find out what some of the options and the interest and what groups might be able to come together to create this.
And I believe it was, as Mr. Crowfoot said, I mean, I don't think the public outside knowledge on the idea of the skating rink is really thrown around. This is the first I've heard of it.
A month ago, I hadn't heard of any of the stuff. I mean, this has kind of been black ops. So,
well, and we actually have a Chadron High student who's quite the hockey player.
Yeah.
And I know he would appreciate having some place to work out without having to drive 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he does that nightly. I mean, that'd save him, their family, a lot of money. Something for to do in town, lessons. Could
give him some place to show off.
Popularity.
George, you want to finish your thoughts?
Well, out there in the general public, if they want to get some, people together to put together a solid plan. I've been in public accounting all my life, and it constantly comes up, we'll form a 501c3, and all we do is file the papers and the donations roll in. It doesn't happen that way. And I know this is a relatively small expenditure. Mark, you mentioned you raised $500,000 for the swimming pool.
I didn't.
But the object was $2 million. So and this $10,000 expenditures isn't going to make a hill of beans in our shortage on paying those bonds. That we're getting to the point of realizing, oh, we have a real problem now. But, you know, that's another story. But
George,
as Greg mentioned, you're going to have to, if the city's going to do this and operate it, the funds are probably going to have to come out of some existing, like the parks. Maybe the library could cut back, you know. We have three major activities that we provide for the parks, the library, and the swimming pool. So, you know, if we do, you know, another thing, it has to be pretty small, because we can't afford another major one.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have to form another, or correct me if I'm wrong, but you wouldn't have to form another 501c3. We could use one of our existing ones. Chadron Community Foundation, Chadron RAC, Chadron Public School Foundation. All those folks have been very good about helping out other people with their tax knowledge and accounting. So anyway, I would think that we would want to, look at something like the Citizens Committee and see if there's a group of people like that out there that care enough to carry this forward over the next couple of years.
Then make it an effort of, again, donated time, donated money, and the way to do it that has minimal impact, if any.
Well, and there, like I said, there's lots of places, other interested parties in town that might want to team with us.
Exactly.
So,
and there could be school groups that could help provide the labor that might be needed. So
detention.
Well, we can make it you're senior though, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Make it the junior class project. Vote on it next city council or school council meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
As this is a discussion item, we will not be able to take any action tonight. Do you guys have anything further to mention?
I think I'm good for now.
I'm going to take on the task of soliciting some public input, coming back at a future council meeting, putting it on the agenda to form a committee if you find sufficient cooperative interest.
And also we'll look and see how they did it with the pool and see if there's a path to follow.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving on from one signature project to another, Downtown Plaza. We do have a memo from the city manager. Greg, do you want to just give us a quick overview for those in attendance?
So the city of Chadron completed the Phase 2 Downtown Gathering Space Master Plan Summary in 2016. In addition to the downtown master plan, that was also part of the Community Development Block Grant dollars for the downtown revitalization to complete renovations and facade work improvements, which included the downtown gathering space, which is now known as the Downtown Plaza. And work on that has completed to include the installation of lights, restroom fixtures, tables, and benches. And right now, as we look out there, it essentially looks like a vacant parking lot. So in December of 2018, we held a meeting with potential stakeholders to present the information contained in the plan to help kind of rejuvenate the work on the plaza. And the primary outcome from the meeting, which was very productive, and I know Deb helped to facilitate that meeting, and Jan was there as well, is the formation of a committee was recommended to help continue towards the completion of the project, to help coordinate design, construction, funding, and the kind of overall use of the completed space. And to form the committee, there's no budget or time implications for the creation of it. Staff recommends the Chadron City Council create a long-standing subcommittee for the programming of the downtown plaza. The recommendation is the subcommittee could consist of one council member, which was currently on that kind of ad hoc committee for the downtown revitalization, 4 members at large from the community, the director of NMDC, the zoning and building official, and the city manager would serve on this subcommittee for the downtown plaza work.
Any questions or comments from the council?
What time frame are you looking at? And if someone such as myself was considering volunteering to be on such a subcommittee, what are your thoughts and how would we proceed from here?
I think what we were looking at is kind of that first phase is how do we establish kind of an overall look of the facility? How do we kind of plan this interim time frame? In terms of what we would be looking at is trying to come up with something, I believe, within the next year of programming and funding sources that we could go after. During that same time frame is also completing or trying to get the funding available to complete the actual design work of this space within this next year's window. In order to go after many of the grant opportunities, we have to essentially have the full construction documents completed with hard engineers' cost estimates. That way we can understand what the financial impacts would be to the overall construction of this to go after some of those grant fundings, which could include anywhere from Peter Hewitt Foundation dollars to the CCCFF funding sources to other private foundations that could contribute, as well as potentially the Dawes County Tourism Board that can contribute. So there's all these funding mechanisms out there, but the key to all of that is to be able to have the actual design completed. So we're looking at utilizing the subcommittee to work towards in the next year the opportunities to complete that. How does that look? What the formulation of that would be? And then from there, having the committee go after that year to get the design completed, then into that next fiscal year, looking at how we go after the grant funding, what our match is going to look like, how do we get those dollars. And I know Deb, has spent a lot of time, kind of looking at this and how we come up with an opportunity to keep the project moving, and how do we see this project come to fruition in terms of the...
Yeah, and again, how we accomplish this is going to be asking the public, frankly. It's another project that, with the city's help, we have moved it to this point. The city has invested a considerable amount of time and money. Obviously, you all know all of that. The point is, we've invested to this level. We now need to go the final couple of miles and get this finished. We have, fixtures and some things sitting there that we're able to purchase. We have to figure out a way to get the plan done to the point where we can install some of that. That's part of our challenge. The other thing is to figure out what, if any, of the fixtures that we currently own that could be temporarily placed on that lot to be used in the meantime. Is there a way to utilize that space for a gathering of any sort the way it is today? That's why those 2 light fixtures were put in there to begin with. Whether or not we can do something on it yet this summer is entirely possible. However, one of the things we've determined is we can't do much over there till we get it leveled. That's going to be an expense because it doesn't drain as well as we'd like it to. So there are some other things that have popped up that need to be done. So in answer to your question about time frame, overall probably a year. I would suspect that this group would not meet any more than maybe monthly, but more likely every other month for updates and sending people out on specific activities or efforts or investigations, maybe. But Greg is absolutely right. So we have a firm dollar amount. You can't go to the funding sources. So that's kind of the first thing. We had to figure out how to get construction quality drawings done, figure out how to get the thing leveled to the point where we can do the construction, and then we'll go about funding it.
And even on a smaller scale, I think that having been involved in this, just, again, as Greg said, it looks like a parking lot. It's not really a very attractive property at the moment. So this committee also then, the use of the word programming, finding interested groups and people to help hold events there. Again, through my involvement with Fur Trade Days, we intend to use the space heavily. There is a farmers market committee that intends to hold a farmers market during the summer on that.
Even to the extent that we could even beautify it some point.
Yeah, just
make it a little more
it up a little.
appealing to be there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a situation where if we could get the elevation issue settled, we could put the water fountain in, but we don't want to do anything that requires construction and installation till we have the elevation correct. So,
Sorry, just curiosity, which way does it drain now? Or does it pool in?
toward Ron's beer garden.
No.
Not ideal.
No, not ideal, I think. Is that correct, Janet?
It goes to the north and to the east, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, part of that, and then, so part of the charter here is also, like you say, get it, work together to make a plan to get it surveyed and get those drawings. So then, too, if money comes in piecemeal over the next 10 years, because you have a firm set of construction drawings, everything is designed at the same time.
Yep.
To look together, you have a consistent look and feel, you're not designing this, it's not going to look like it was a collage.
But a couple new people that came and sat in on that last meeting we had brought ideas that we didn't know were being kicked around. For example, I didn't know there was that much interest or renewed interest in restarting the whole farmers market thing. That's a huge piece of this. If they're willing to come down there, if they're willing to locate there, then that's just another entity that we can rally to help us get it to the point where it works for them.
Sure.
And one of the keys of the subcommittee, and it's been, talked about, how do you get funding for a project like this, and as much use as you can get out of it, as much programming as you can start to use into that space, even in its current nature, the more opportunity you get for people to get excited about it, the more opportunity you get for people to want to chip in and help fund and get things going, because they actually see it being used versus, something that, well, it's a vacant parking lot, and they might do something with it.
That community buy-in is very, very important. We saw that, talk about the Aquatic Center, the community buy-in was tremendous. Probably the singular force that got it moving.
Thank you, Deb.
Any further discussion about the formation of this committee?
I guess I would be willing to be on this if we formed a committee.
And I do intend to serve as well. I think there's no reason we couldn't have two.
It could be, again, that was just what was done through the downtown
Absolutely.
revitalization, so
And do
if
I-
council wishes to have two, that'd be great.
And do I recall that you had said there was keen interest from a number of different entities that wanted to be part of this discussion? Is that correct?
I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
Tourism Chamber,
Thanks.
the banks,
Mm-hmm.
the community foundation that's located at one of the banks.
Okay.
And you're interested in serving?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Janet, are you interested?
Yeah.
Don't want to appoint you if you don't want to be on there. Appointed by position, I suppose. Greg? Okay. Do we need to appoint 4 community members at this point, or can we just?
Yeah, you need to write it up and
Well, I think what we
establish
would
your
need
plan.
is a motion to create the subcommittee. We'll go out and get names for recommendations for that, and then bring that back
Okay.
for formal.
Create the subcommittee now and appoint the members later.
Members later, correct.
Very fair.
I move that we appoint a subcommittee for the development of the downtown plaza as discussed.
I will second that motion. If there is no further discussion, may we have roll call?
Warner.
Aye.
Well,
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bennett.
Yes.
Crowfoot.
Yes, ma'am. I move to pay the bills.
Second.
Any items of interest tonight? Clean bill of health?
I was just wondering, we do random drug testing for all the departments? I saw that was in the library.
We do.
Uh-huh. Okay.
All right.
next.
May we have a roll call, please?
Warner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bennett.
Yes.
Crowfoot.
Yes, ma'am.
City manager, you have any more talking to do?
So I just want to remind folks of the code red with the winter weather advisory that has been issued by the National Weather Service. So if you are in the downtown area, please be reminded from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. to not have your vehicles parked in the emergency snow route area. With that, I know the chief was going to want to speak a little bit about.
Thank you. Just want to remind everybody, dog licenses are due at the end of the month. They get substantially higher February 1st. They go from $3 to $20 and from $11 to $40. If you have a dog that's 6 months old, once the dog gets 6 months, you have 30 days to license it. Or if you move to town, you have 30 days to license your dog no matter what month it is. Or if you'd happen to purchase a dog in July, you have 30 days to license. So I just encourage everybody, if you're going to license your dog, do so by next Thursday.
License your dogs, folks. And again, there's an actual snow emergency tonight. For anybody who might be watching who lives in an emergency snow route. That Venn diagram probably does not cross over, but just in case. Yes?
That's all I have for this evening.
Okay.
We get bids for the record service?
No.
Where are we on the airport FBO?
I'll be addressing the committee's recommendations and comments this week to have that on the agenda for the first meeting in February.
Okay. Moving on to council closing comments.
Martin Luther King Day. Important day in our history, important man and an important movement. Really appreciate the fact that we do have a federal holiday marking this. That's all I have.
Yes. Thanks, Mark, for bringing that up. I was thinking the same thing in honor of the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think it's important for all of us to be cognizant of the fact that there are always times in our days where we could peacefully stand up for justice and equal treatment for others.
I have nothing.
Wanted to echo the comments about Martin Luther King Jr. Day and also share some news from the Chadron State Music Department. The music program is hosting its annual High Plains Honor Band and Choir on February 4th and 5th. The band and choir concert is at 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 5th. They have a guest performer this year instead of a guest conductor. The Bill Molenhoff Trio is performing a concert on February 4th at 7 p.m. It's going to be a great event. That's something I've personally participated in over the years. Wanted to make that announcement on behalf of the department. Encourage everybody to support that. It's a great event, and a lot of very talented high school musicians take part.
Good. To quote Bob Barker, spade, neuter, and then license your pets. I do actually encourage the community, anyone who's interested in ice skating, and I'm sure I just sent another shiver down Greg's back, to reach out and let us know. Mark, myself, other council members, community information and involvement will be important to move this forward, or just kill it, whichever way the community chooses, I guess. Thank you.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Can we have roll call, please?
Turner.
Aye.
Welch.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Bennett.
Yes.
Crowfoot.
Yes, ma'am.
We are adjourned. Thank you for sharing.